I grew up knowing I wasn't the favorite. I don't mean in a dramatic movie-type way. I mean in the small, everyday ways that tell you exactly where you stand. My brother Jason was the golden one. The future doctor. The blessing. The one who got second chances, louder applause, bigger slices, softer rules. I was the helper. The good kid. The one who didn't cause trouble because I learned early that the quieter I stayed, the easier life was for everyone else. Mom used to joke about it like it was harmless. "Jason is our star," she'd say. Then she'd turn to me and smile. "And you're our backup. Our steady one. We can always count on you." Backup. That word crawled into my bones and lived there. Backup meant I came second. Backup meant I was useful, not cherished. Backup meant I was the one who filled in when the real choice wasn't available. Birthdays? Jason got parties, balloons, cousins invited, huge cakes. I got a store-bought cupcake and "we'll make it up to you next weekend." School events? Mom showed up early for his science fairs and piano recitals. For mine, she texted, "Send pictures." Whenever something went wrong, it was always, "Can you help out? You're so responsible." But whenever it came to love, attention, pride, those belonged to Jason. The first time she called me backup child, I was 11. She laughed. Dad laughed. Jason laughed. I laughed too because kids do that when they don't want to look hurt. But I remember going to my room and staring at my reflection, wondering what it would feel like to be someone's first choice. Years passed. I moved out. Got a job. Built a life that didn't orbit their approval. And still, every time my phone buzzed with a message from Mom, it was never, "How are you?" It was always, "Can you do me a favor?" By the time I hit 26, I had stopped expecting anything different from them. Expectations are what hurt the most, so I let mine die slowly, piece by piece. I worked full-time at a clinic front desk, paid my rent on time, packed my own lunches, fixed my own problems. Meanwhile, Jason was still figuring things out. He bounced from major to major, dropped out twice, crashed his car, moved back home, then out again, then back again. Every time, Mom sighed and said, "He just needs support. He has so much potential." When I needed help once with a security deposit because my roommate bailed at the last minute, she said, "You're independent. You'll figure something out." I did. I always did. Holiday dinners made the ranking system obvious. Conversations revolved around Jason's dreams, Jason's plans, Jason's possibilities. When they turned to me, it was practical questions. "How's work? Still at that little clinic? You saving money?" Not cruel. Not loud. Just dismissive in the quiet way that erases you without anyone noticing. Sometimes, when I drove home after visiting, I'd replay the whole evening and think, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I'm lucky I wasn't pressured the way Jason was. Then I'd remember the way Mom looked at him, soft, full of pride, and the way she looked at me, relieved like at least one of her kids was low maintenance. Being the backup meant I was never the emergency, never the priority, never the child worth stopping the world for. Till one night, everything changed and suddenly I wasn't backup anymore. I was the only option left. It was just after midnight when my phone rang. A number I recognized immediately. Mom. She never called me late. Late-night calls are for bad news and people you truly rely on. I hesitated for a second before answering. "Hey," I said. "Everything okay?" Her voice was shaky. Not the dramatic shaky she used when talking about bills or stress. This was different. Real fear. "I need you to come get me. Now." My heart jumped into my throat. "Where are you?" "At home. Your father is asleep. Jason's out. I think I need to go to the hospital." The words tumbled out fast, whispered like she was scared the walls would hear. "My chest hurts. It's tight. My arm is tingling. I didn't want to wake your father." He has work tomorrow. For a second, I just sat there processing it. She thought she might be having a heart attack. And the first thought she had was to protect his sleep. Why didn't you call an ambulance? I asked. Hospital bills, she snapped, then softened. Just come. Please. You're always calm. You'll know what to do. Backup child activated. Automatic. No questions. No hesitation. I grabbed my keys and shoes and was out the door before my brain could decide how to feel about it. The whole drive, the road blurred with possibilities. What if I'm too late? What if she collapses? What if I lose her? Beneath the fear, something uglier twisted. So now I am needed. Now I rank high enough. I hated myself for thinking it. But it was there. I pulled into the driveway and she was already standing at the door, purse on her shoulder, coat thrown over pajamas, face pale. Don't scare your father, she whispered as we slipped out. He needs his rest. She eased herself into the passenger seat, breathing shallow breaths. I turned toward the hospital. Tell me everything, I said. Calm voice. Steady hands. She has always trusted my steady hands. As the streetlights passed over us, I realized something. In this moment, I wasn't the extra child. I was the one she believed would show up. And that truth hurt in a way I wasn't prepared for. The ER waiting room was bright in that artificial too-awake way that makes night feel even lonelier. I helped Mom check in, repeating her symptoms because she always minimized everything. Chest pressure. Radiating arm pain. Dizziness. The nurse's eyes sharpened and suddenly things moved faster. Clipboard taken. Vitals checked. EKG. Blood work. They put her on a bed behind a curtain and hooked up monitors that beeped in patient, indifferent rhythm. She gripped my wrist. Hard. Stay. Like I was oxygen. Like I was the only person in the world keeping her anchored. I stayed. I pulled the chair close and tried not to show how badly my own hands were shaking. Every few minutes she'd whisper something small. Don't tell your father. He'll worry. Jason has work tomorrow. He needs sleep. I didn't want to bother anyone. Anyone. I counted silently. Dad. Jason. Aunts. Grandma. Cousins. Apparently, they were all listed under people you don't bother. I was listed under emergency tool. The doctor finally came, calm and gentle. Your enzymes look okay so far. Could be angina. Could be stress. Could be early warning signs. We're keeping you overnight for observation. Mom nodded like a student being scolded. When he left, she exhaled. See? Overreacting. I shouldn't have called. I stared at her. You did the right thing. She looked at me carefully. You're good in crises. You always were. You don't fall apart. An old ache opened in my chest. That doesn't mean I don't feel anything. She didn't answer. Around 3 a.m., Dad finally called. My screen lit up. Home? I looked at it. No, how is she? No, are you okay? Just logistics. I texted back, hospital. Chest pain. He typed, oh. Then, keep me posted. He didn't come. He didn't ask if I needed anything. He went back to sleep. I sat there watching the monitors glow, wondering when exactly I became more convenient than loved. Mom dozed off for a while. I pulled the scratchy hospital blanket over her shoulders and just sat, listening to the buzz of machines and muffled footsteps and nighttime whispers. And something inside me shifted. Not into anger. Into clarity. For years, I thought I was the spare because I wasn't enough. Not loud enough. Not glamorous enough. Not gifted enough. But sitting there, watching the woman who rarely hugged me cling to my hand like a lifeline, I realized something much darker. I wasn't the backup because I was less. I was the backup because I was reliable. 'Cause I showed up. 'Cause they knew I would sacrifice sleep and time and feelings without complaint. I wasn't invisible. I was convenient. And convenience in our family outranked love every time. When morning finally bled through the windows, the nurse brought me coffee that tasted like burnt paper. Mom blinked awake and gave me a small smile. "You're a good girl," she murmured. It landed like a brick. Good girl. Helpful girl. Backup girl. I smiled back anyway. But inside, a new sentence formed, quiet, steady, undeniable. This cannot be my role forever. They discharged Mom late the next afternoon with a stack of papers, prescriptions, and a speech about follow-ups, rest, lifestyle changes. She nodded obediently to everything like the doctor was assigning extra homework, not warning her about her heart. Inside, the air felt heavy. Not dramatic movie storm heavy, just regular, ordinary afternoon air. Cars passed. Birds chirped. Someone pushed a squeaky cart of hospital supplies across the sidewalk. It almost annoyed me that the world didn't look different. 'Cause I did. I helped Mom into the passenger seat again. Buckled her in the way she used to do for me when I was little. She smiled faintly. "You're such a blessing," she said. That word again. Blessing. Useful. Resource. A warm tool. On the drive home, she talked about practical things. Groceries. Laundry. Who should know, who shouldn't? "Don't mention it to Aunt Carol," she added. "She'll just make it dramatic." I bit my tongue because the whole thing already was dramatic. We just pretended it wasn't. We pulled into the driveway. Curtains were open. The house looked peaceful. Safe. Normal. Dad opened the door before we even got to the porch. "There you are," he said, relief mixed with annoyance. "Long night, huh?" He kissed Mom on the cheek, patted her shoulder, then stepped back like he'd just inspected a repaired appliance. "Doctors say you're fine?" Mom shrugged. "Observation only. Stress mostly." He turned to me. "Good thing you were around. You've always had a cooler head than your brother." Then he clapped my arm like a coworker at the end of a shift. "Thanks, kid." No hug. No, how did you feel driving in the middle of the night thinking your mother might die? Just thanks. Job well done. Backup clocked out. Jason came downstairs eventually, rubbing his eyes. "You okay, Mom?" he asked, giving her a brief hug like someone acknowledging storm clouds in the distance. Then he looked at me. "You stayed with her all night?" "Yeah." He nodded. "You're tough." Compliments scraped instead of soothing. Tough meant you can handle it so we don't have to. Mom went to lie down. Dad turned on the TV. Jason disappeared back upstairs. I stood in the living room for a few seconds like a guest waiting to be told where to put my shoes. Then, quietly, I gathered my bag and headed for the door. No one noticed until I'd already slipped my shoes on. "Leaving?" Dad asked, barely glancing away from the game. "Yeah." "All right. Drive safe." That was it. I walked out to my car and sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at my own reflection in the windshield. 4 years I'd been telling myself a story. They don't pick me because I'm not enough. But another story had been forming, clearer and crueler. They pick me when it costs them something to care. The middle of the night? Scary hospital? Potential emergency? That's when I became valuable. Not on holidays. Not at graduations. Not when I needed advice. Not when I was lonely. I was emergency-only love. A fire extinguisher tucked in the corner, ignored until flames rise, then slammed back in place once the danger passes. The realization didn't make me cry. Didn't even make me angry. It made me tired. Tired in my bones. On the drive home, the radio played something soft. I turned it off. Silence felt more honest. Memories started lining up like files in a cabinet I had avoided opening. The science fair where Jason got a new laptop for school, and I got a used calculator because you're not as techy anyway. The year I broke my wrist and still set the table one-handed because nobody noticed I was struggling. Times Mom called me only when she needed someone to sit with her while she waited on results, but never when she just wanted to chat. Patterns. Layer on layer. Invisible at first, obvious once seen. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, the sky had shifted into evening. I sat there for a while, engine ticking softly, letting the truth land fully. They didn't consider me fragile. They didn't consider me priority. They considered me available. And availability in our house was mistaken for love, both given and received. I went upstairs, dropped my keys on the counter, and sank onto the couch. My phone buzzed. Mom, thank you again. You're always so dependable. Love you. Dependable. I stared at the word. My reply hovered in my head, dozens of versions. No problem. Anytime. Love you too. The usual. But my fingers didn't move. Somewhere deep, something new was learning how to stand. Maybe love wasn't supposed to feel like being on call 24/7. Maybe being dependable didn't mean being disposable. Maybe the backup child didn't have to keep auditioning for a role she never wanted. I put the phone face down. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself imagine a different version of me. One who didn't wait by the phone, ready to fix, ready to soothe, ready to disappear when the crisis ended. A main character version. The idea scared me. It also felt like oxygen. The next few days passed like fog. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just heavy. Mom texted occasional updates, blood pressure, new medication, doctor said take it easy, and every message ended the same way. I'll let you know if I need you. Not if I want to see you. Not let's have coffee. Not thank you again for staying all night. How are you feeling? Need. Always need. At work I went through the motions. Answered emails. Smiled at coworkers. Designed layouts. But my brain replayed the hospital over and over. The white walls. The beeping machines. Her hand clutching mine. Dad sleeping at home, trusting I would handle it. That trust no longer felt flattering. Felt like weight. One evening, Tasha, my roommate, unofficial therapist, queen of calling me out, plopped down beside me on the couch with popcorn. You've been quiet, she said carefully. I'm thinking. Dangerous. I told her everything. The midnight call. The ER. The way my family returned to normal like someone hit unpause. The way I couldn't shake the tool not daughter feeling. She listened, eyebrows slowly climbing. Then she said, okay. Question. If you stopped showing up every single time, what do you think would happen? I opened my mouth to argue. Closed it. Thought. They'd be upset, I said. Okay. And then? They'd say I don't care. And then? They'd figure something else out, I guess. Call an ambulance. Call Jason. Call a neighbor. She nodded. So you're saying they could figure it out. They just don't have to. Because you do it. I stared at the wall. That sounds harsh, I murmured. That sounds accurate, she replied. Silence stretched. A long, uncomfortable stretch, the kind your soul feels in its joints. I remembered being 12, calling Dad from the school bathroom because I got my first period and panicked. He told me to ask the nurse. He was busy. I remembered the nurse hugging me, whispering, Your dad loves you, honey. He just doesn't know how to show up for the messy parts. But he did know how to show up for Jason's soccer games. For work dinners. For barbecues. For everyone else. So maybe it wasn't that he didn't know. Maybe he just didn't practice with me. The next weekend, Mom called again. Not emergency, just the soft voice she used when she was building toward a favor. Hey, sweetie. Could you come by and help organize my meds? Your father tried, but he mixed the bottles. Old me would have said, of course, already grabbing my shoes. New me paused. I can FaceTime you and walk you through it, I said gently. Silence. A flicker of confusion. Then the quiet sigh of disappointment. I just thought you're so good at this stuff. I am, I said. And I'll still help. Just not by driving 2 hours every time. Another pause. Okay, she said finally, slower than usual, like the word had weight. FaceTime then. We spent 20 minutes labeling pill organizers. She managed fine. When we hung up, something in my chest unknotted, tiny but noticeable. Boundary. Survived. Later that night, Dad texted. Thanks for helping your mom. You're a lifesaver as always. I started to type the old script, no problem, and stopped. Instead, I wrote, I'm glad I could help. But I can't always be the only one. You and Jason need to know her meds too. 3 dots. Top. 3 dots again. Okay. We'll try. Not amazing. Not transformational. But different. And different matters. Over the following weeks, small moments piled up. Mom needed someone to drive her to a checkup. I asked if Jason could take this one. He did, reluctantly, and acted like he'd done charity work afterward, but still. He went. Dad tried to schedule me for 3 errands in one day: pharmacy, grocery run, bank. I told him I could do 1, not 3. He sounded shocked. Then he adjusted. Every time I chose myself even slightly, guilt rose like a wave, thick, sticky, relentless. My chest would tighten, my brain screaming, You're selfish. You're ungrateful. Good daughters don't say no. But beneath the guilt there was something else growing, slower, steadier. Self-respect. Not loud. Not vengeful. Just present. Then came the day everything cracked wide open. Mom called again, this time not scared, not soft. Irritated. Your father forgot to fill the gas tank after my appointment. We almost stalled. This is why I always ask you. You're dependable. Jason's busy. Your father can't handle details. You should have just come. Old reflex flared. Apologize. Fix it. Drive over. Restore order. But then I heard my own voice, quiet, firm, before I had time to edit it. Mom, listen. I love you. But I'm not your backup plan anymore. I'm not the emergency default because other people don't want to try. I'll help when I can, not because I'm the spare, but because I choose to. There's a difference. Silence fell like snow. Long, cold. Heavy. Finally she whispered, stunned. Where is this coming from? I swallowed. From years of being the one you call only when you're scared. From being praised for how little space I take up. From realizing I deserve to be a daughter, not just a solution. Her breathing wavered on the other end. I didn't know you felt like that, she said. 'Cause I never let you see it, I thought. I'm learning, I replied softly. And I want us to learn together. But the way things were can't keep going. We didn't solve everything that day. No tears in the living room movie ending. Just a fragile, tentative shift, like someone cracked a window in a stuffy house. Later that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized something else. Revenge in families like ours isn't slamming doors or burning bridges. Sometimes the loudest revenge is changing the script. Not being the backup. Not rushing when summoned. Not carrying what was never mine. And slowly, painfully, forcing everyone else to meet reality where it actually is. For the first time in a long time, I fell asleep without putting my phone on loud. And the world did not fall apart. A week later, I went over on a Sunday afternoon, not because they needed something, but because I chose to. The difference felt strange in my bones. Like learning how to walk again. Mom was in the kitchen, shuffling through mail. Dad was on the couch with the TV low, pretending to nap but listening to everything. Jason had stopped by too, stretching his legs across the coffee table like he owned the place. Normal family scene. Safe. Familiar. And yet everything felt tilted. Mom looked up when she saw me. "Oh, hey," she said, surprised. "I didn't ask you to come." "I know," I replied. "I just wanted to visit." The sentence hung there. Wanted. Not needed. She smiled, but it flickered, like her brain didn't quite know where to file that information. We sat. We talked. Weather. Groceries. Doctor updates. Mundane things. No crisis. No emergency instructions. No list of tasks. For the first time in years, my hands weren't automatically busy. Halfway through, Mom reached for the stack of envelopes again and sighed. "Bills," she muttered. "Always something. And the insurance denied one of my tests. We'll figure it out, though. We always do." Old me would have leaned over immediately, grabbed the papers, said, "Let me handle it." I took a breath. "Do you want help with those?" I asked gently. "Or are you just venting?" She froze. That question, so small, landed like a stone in water. "Just venting," she said slowly. "For now." So I nodded and let her vent. No rescue. No takeover. Dad opened one eye. Studied me. "You're different lately," he said. There was no accusation in his tone. Just curiosity and maybe unease. "I'm trying to be," I said. He scratched his jaw. "You've always been the steady one. The one we could count on." "I still want to be steady," I answered. "I just don't want to disappear because of it." He didn't respond. But something tightened behind his eyes, like gears beginning to move for the first time in years. Jason chimed in then, lazy and casual. "You're overthinking," he said, shrugging. "Families just work how they work." I turned toward him. "Yeah," I said softly. "And sometimes that means some people get taken care of and some people get taken for granted." He rolled his eyes. "You're making it sound dramatic." Maybe I was. Maybe I wasn't. Mom shifted uncomfortably. Dad stood up and wandered into the kitchen, busying himself with nothing. I looked down at my hands and decided I was done pretending. "Remember," I said, "how you all call me when things fall apart? When something scary happens. When someone needs a ride to the ER or paperwork sorted or bad news softened." They nodded. No one spoke. "That's love, yes," I continued. "But it's also responsibility. And sometimes it feels like all the soft parts of family, the laughter, the how are you really, the casual dinners, belong to everyone else. And I just get the emergencies." Silence. Not hostile. Not explosive. Heavy. True. Mom's eyes filled slowly. Not guilt tears. Recognition tears. "I never thought of it like that," she whispered. "I know," I said. "I never let you." We sat like that for a while, messy, awkward, honest. Later, when I went to leave, Mom followed me onto the porch. The evening was warm. Crickets humming. Faint light spilling through the curtains. She reached for my hand, not gripping, not clinging. Just holding. "When I called you that night," she said quietly, "I didn't think. I just knew you'd come." I swallowed. "I know. That's not always fair," she added. "And I don't know how to fix it yet." Her voice trembled, but it didn't hide behind jokes or guilt or instructions. Stood there, naked, uncertain. "That's enough," I said. "We don't fix it in a day. We start." She nodded. And then she said something I had waited my whole life to hear without even knowing I'd been waiting. "Next time, tell me when I'm using you instead of loving you." I laughed softly through the sting in my eyes. "I will," I said. Driving home, windows cracked, air brushing past my face, I felt something loosen. Not forgiveness exactly, not closure, but space. Space between me and the role they trained me for. Space for the girl I might become if I wasn't always on standby. Revenge, if it existed here at all, wasn't a scream. It was a boundary. A quiet line in the sand that said, I am here, but not at the cost of myself. And for the first time, the road ahead didn't look like duty. It looked like a choice. A few weeks passed. Life didn't magically transform into some glittery, inspirational montage. There were still errands, still phone calls, still moments where old habits tugged at me like invisible strings. But something inside me had changed. And because of that, everything else started to shift, slowly, clumsily, imperfectly. The first test came on an ordinary Tuesday night. I had plans, nothing huge. Just dinner with coworkers, a rare night where I wasn't on call for anyone, where laughter didn't come laced with obligation. Halfway through appetizers, my phone lit up. My chest tightened automatically, that old reflex of, drop everything. I excused myself and stepped outside. Hey, I said. Her voice sounded frazzled. Your father can't find the insurance papers for the new policy. He's panicking. Can you come over? I closed my eyes for half a second. The restaurant noise hummed behind me. Warm air. Streetlights. The music from somewhere down the block. It's my world. Not theirs. Where did he last have them? I asked. In the desk drawer, she said. Or the kitchen. Or maybe the car. You know how he is. I figured you'd come organize it. The request wasn't cruel. It wasn't malicious. It was muscle memory. For both of us. Old me would have apologized to my friends, rushed to the car, sorted the papers, maybe stayed to wash a few dishes while I was there. New me took a breath. I can't come tonight, I said gently. I have plans. But put me on speaker and I'll walk you both through finding them. Silence. Longer than comfortable. Then Dad's voice, gruffy and impatient. This would be faster if you were here. I felt that sentence try to burrow into my spine, into the part of me that always bends. It would be faster for you, I replied calmly. But not for me. And my time matters too. Another silence. Then Mom sighed. Okay. Speaker on. We spent 15 minutes searching. Guess where the papers were? Exactly where they always keep them. Top drawer. Labeled. Neat. Dad muttered, embarrassed. Mom chuckled nervously. See, I said softly. You didn't need me there. You just needed to believe you could do it. We hung up. I walked back to the table. My friends laughed. The waiter brought another basket of bread. The world continued, and I was still in it, not missing from my own life. That night, I lay in bed replaying the call. For years, I believed every problem was my responsibility, every gap mine to fill, every silence mine to comfort. But the truth was simpler. Sometimes they had chosen helplessness because it guaranteed control. And I had chosen overfunctioning because it guaranteed approval. Realizing that wasn't rage-inducing. It was heartbreaking. Not because they were villains, but because none of us knew another way. A few days later, Jason texted, Need your car Saturday. Mine's in the shop. Old script, sure. Take it. I'll manage. New script, pause. Consider. Decide. What for? I replied. Gym. Then hanging with friends. Maybe a date. Sorry, I typed. I need it. You can Uber. Or borrow Dad's. He replied with a barrage of annoyed emojis. Then you've changed. I stared at the words. For a second, shame tried to flare, hot, familiar, ready to choke me. Then another thought rose up. Good. I have changed. 'Cause I am finally choosing something other than exhaustion. That weekend, I drove to the farmer's market, bought flowers, walked through the stalls with coffee in one hand, sunlight on my face, no mental checklist looming like a storm cloud. And somewhere between tomatoes and handmade soap, I realized how little space I had been allowing myself to simply exist. Not useful, not efficient, just present. Later that evening, I stopped by my parents' house, deliberately, with no emergency attached. Mom was in the living room flipping through channels. Dad sat at the table sorting mail, tongue poking out slightly in concentration. I placed the flowers in a vase and set them on the counter. "For the house," I said. Mom blinked. "You didn't have to." "I know," I replied. "I wanted to." We talked. Not about bills. Not about crises. About a show we both secretly watched, about recipes, about a neighbor's ridiculous new lawn ornaments. Then, quietly, Mom said, "You didn't rush when we called about the papers." I held her gaze. "No," I said. "I was upset at first," she admitted. "I thought she doesn't care anymore. But when you stayed on the phone, I realized you were still helping. Just differently." My throat tightened. "That's the goal," I whispered. "Different. Healthier. For all of us." She nodded. Then Dad cleared his throat. "I found the tax forms by myself yesterday," he said, almost shy. "Didn't call you." I smiled. "I'm proud of you." He shrugged, pretending it wasn't a big deal. But I saw it, the tiny flicker of dignity returning to his face. The sense that maybe he didn't need a daughter as a crutch, but could learn to stand without leaning so hard. Later that night, driving home, I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who believed love meant saying yes until there was nothing left of her. The one who mistook self-erasure for devotion. The one who wore reliable like armor and wondered why she always felt cold. I didn't hate her. I mourned her. 'Cause she deserved softness. She deserved invitations instead of assignments. She deserved to be called for coffee, not crisis. And little by little, day by day, I was becoming someone who could give that to her, even if my family never fully learned how. Revenge, if anyone watching my life would dare to call it that, wasn't destruction. It was reclamation. Claiming my time. Claiming my voice. Reclaiming the right to exist without performing. The world didn't explode when I stopped being the backup. It opened. And that, more than any dramatic confrontation, felt like the quiet beginning of something finally, beautifully right. The shift didn't go unnoticed by everyone. Some people adjusted. Some resisted. And some, like Jason, decided my growth was a personal attack. Started subtly. Short replies. Delayed responses. Eye rolls when I visited. Jokes that didn't sound like jokes. "You're so independent now," he'd say, tone dripping with something almost bitter. "Guess you don't need a family." For a while, I let it slide. Then one night, his resentment finally found its voice. Mom invited both of us over for dinner. Nothing fancy, pasta, salad, garlic bread. The house smelled like comfort in Sunday evenings and childhood. I walked in with dessert. Jason arrived empty-handed as usual. We sat. We ate. Chatter flowed. Then Mom mentioned, almost casually, "Your sister helped me set up reminders on my phone for my meds. It's been easier." Jason smirked. "Yeah, until she decides boundaries again." Table went quiet. Mom frowned. "Jason." He shrugged. "What?" "I'm just saying. Ever since she started therapy or reading those self-help posts or whatever, suddenly everything is trauma and boundaries and I can't right now." Heat crawled up my neck. "I still help," I said quietly. "Sure," he said. "When it's convenient for you." The words landed like stones. Convenient. That old guilt storm surged again, rising fast, pressing against my throat, but this time something steadier stood with it. I set my fork down. "Jason," I said calmly, "I stayed up all night with Mom in the ER. I took days off work for appointments. I rearranged my life for years. I love this family. But loving you doesn't mean I have to disappear for you." He scoffed. "You're being dramatic." Dad cleared his throat, uneasy. Mom stared at her plate. And suddenly I saw the entire dynamic clearly, like someone turned on the lights in a dark room. Jason wasn't used to sharing responsibility. He'd lived decades believing his role was to exist, while my role was to hold everything together. So my change didn't just shift me. It unbalanced his comfort. I leaned forward slightly. "You get help," I said softly. "You get forgiveness. You get second chances. You get celebrations and attention. When you mess up, it's shrugged off. When I set a boundary once, I'm selfish. That doesn't feel fair." He opened his mouth, closed it. Dad finally spoke, quiet but firm. "She's right." Jason's head snapped toward him. "Seriously?" Dad sighed, the tired sigh of someone finally admitting what's been obvious forever. "For a long time we leaned on her too much," he said. "We called her first because she always showed up. That wasn't fair to her. And it wasn't fair to you either, Jason. You didn't have to learn how to step up." Silence. Heavy. Dense. Mom wiped at her eyes. "I did that," she whispered. "I told myself she was strong so I wouldn't feel guilty leaning on her. I never asked what that strength cost." My throat tightened. Not victory. Not revenge. Just grief. For all the years we'd lived in roles instead of relationships. Jason shifted in his chair, suddenly uncomfortable in the spotlight. "So now what?" he muttered. "We pretend she's fragile?" "No," I said softly. "You treat me like I matter. Not just when things collapse, but also when things are fine." He looked at me, really looked, maybe for the first time since we were kids. And he said, not kindly and not cruelly, just honestly, "I don't know how to do that." Something inside me softened. "That's okay," I replied. "We learn." We finished dinner quieter than usual. No big sentimental group hug. No movie script reconciliation. Just a subtle, shaky recalibration. Later, when I drove home, the guilt monster tried one more trick. "Maybe you pushed too hard. Maybe you're ruining things." But then I remembered the hospital. The backup calls. The way exhaustion had hollowed me out. And another truth rose above the noise. Healthy relationships survive honest conversations. Unhealthy ones require your silence. That night, I sat on my bed with a notebook, therapy homework, and wrote 3 columns. What I give. What I get. What I need. Under what I give, the list filled fast. Time. Energy. Listening. Driving. Fixing. Calming. Explaining. Covering up. Holding secrets. Being the rock. Under what I get, the list was smaller but changing. Respect, sometimes now. Appreciation, growing. Less panic. More conversation. And under what I need, I wrote slowly. To be asked, not assumed. To be chosen, not summoned. To be loved, not used. To rest without guilt. To say no and still belong. Reading it back, I realized something enormous. For years, I had been punishing myself for wanting normal things. Basic things. Human things. And suddenly, the story wasn't. Backup child finally gets revenge. It was. Woman finally comes home to herself. In the quiet of my apartment, lights low, window cracked open to the night air, I whispered the words I had never dared say out loud before. I deserve to be cared for too. And for the first time, the sentence didn't sound like rebellion. sounded like truth. The real turning point didn't look like a turning point. No slammed doors. No dramatic speeches. No epic fight with thunder crashing in the background. It started with an invitation. My coworker Lena was having a small birthday weekend. Cabin, lake, board games, food, people who weren't related to me. I almost said no automatically. My brain had already started building excuses. What if mom needs something? What if dad calls? What if there's an emergency? That word again, emergency. Like I was permanently stationed in a watchtower, waiting to sound the alarm. I hovered over the text box, then typed, "Count me in." When Friday came, I packed a bag, left a note with emergency numbers on the fridge for my parents because growth, yes, but also reality, and drove out of the city. The lake was quiet in the way cities never are. Water breathing slowly against the shore. Trees whispering every time the wind passed through. Laughter floating from the porch where people played cards and argued about rules. And somewhere inside that stillness, I realized just how noisy my house had always been, even when nobody was speaking. Not noise from voices. Noise from tension. Duty. Expectation. That first night, we cooked pasta, someone burned the garlic bread, we laughed too hard, and nobody needed me. Nobody asked me to solve anything. Nobody treated me like an emotional Swiss Army knife. I was just a person. Eating. Laughing. Existing. At one point, I slipped outside with a blanket and sat on the dock, my legs dangling above the cool, dark water. The moon glowed like a quiet witness. Crickets spoke their language. Somewhere across the lake, a dog barked. My phone buzzed. Mom. For a moment, my heart did that old leap. Adrenaline, readiness, alert mode. I took a breath and opened the text. "How's the trip?" "Send pictures." I stared at the message. Simple. Kind. No request attached. No panic. No list. No coded guilt. Just curiosity. My throat tightened for a whole different reason. I sent a photo, the lake, the moon, my toes above the water, and typed, "It's peaceful. I'm glad I came." She sent back a heart. Nothing else. And in that space where a demand used to be, something gentle settled into place. Later, inside, someone suggested a game where everyone answers random questions from a card deck. What was your childhood role in your family? The room erupted in groans and laughter. Oh boy, therapy questions. Skip. But the cards stayed on the table. One by one, people answered. The golden child. Peacemaker. Clown. The rebel. When it was my turn, I hesitated. Words formed in my chest, heavy but clear. I think, I said slowly, I was the fixer. The backup plan. The one who made things smoother so other people didn't have to feel uncomfortable. A hush. Not pitiful. Not dramatic. Just honest. Someone nodded. Someone murmured, same. Someone else asked softly, "And who are you now?" Question hung in the air like a lantern. Who am I now? Not the backup. Not the emergency hotline. Not the second choice. I'm learning, I said finally. I think I'm becoming someone who knows she deserves care too. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't. That night, I lay in a soft bed, wrapped in borrowed blankets that smelled faintly like detergent and pine, and I realized how unfamiliar safety felt. Not because I was in danger at home, but because emotional safety had always come with a price tag. You get comfort if you perform. You get affection if you stay quiet. You get belonging if you don't need too much. Here, the equation didn't exist. And suddenly the idea of going back to normal didn't feel comfortable anymore. Felt cramped. When the weekend ended and I drove back into town, my phone buzzed again, this time Dad. Call me when you're close. My stomach tightened instinctively, but I called anyway. Hey, he said. Just checking when you'll be back. Your mom wants to make dinner. Nothing urgent. Nothing urgent. The phrase washed over me like warm water. We talked about traffic, weather, my car. Normal things parents talk about when care isn't tied to usefulness. When I pulled into their driveway, Mom waved from the window like she used to when I was a teenager coming back from hanging out with friends. Dinner was already simmering on the stove. We ate. We talked. Jason even cracked a joke that didn't have barbs in it. Halfway through the meal, Dad set his fork down. "I've been thinking," he said, a sentence opener that historically meant either something expensive or something uncomfortable. "About that night in the hospital." My chest stiffened. He continued, "I didn't come because I assumed you had it. 'Cause you always do. And I realized that wasn't pride in you. That was laziness in me." The words landed like heavy stones, but not painful ones. Grounding ones. He cleared his throat. "Next time I show up too. Even if I don't know what to do. Even if I'm scared." Mom squeezed his hand. I didn't cry. I didn't make a speech. I just nodded, because sometimes the most powerful moments don't need commentary. Later, driving home alone in the dark, streetlights passing overhead like steady breaths, I felt an unfamiliar sensation spreading through my chest. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't triumph. It was relief. Relief that I wasn't carrying the entire world anymore. Relief that the people who built the system with me were finally starting to dismantle it alongside me. And relief that, even if they hadn't, I finally knew I had the right to put the load down. I parked outside my apartment, turned off the engine, and just sat there for a minute. The girl who once believed love meant exhaustion was finally letting herself rest. And somehow that felt like the bravest thing I had ever done. The thing about healing is that it doesn't announce itself. There's no banner, no fireworks, no dramatic congratulations, you're fixed now moment. It arrives quietly, in small choices, in gentle pauses, in the spaces where old reactions used to live. A few weeks after the lake trip, I noticed one of those quiet moments. It happened at the grocery store. My phone rang, Mom. Old me would have answered immediately, even with arms full of milk and bread and pasta sauce, apologizing breathlessly like I had done something wrong simply for existing. This time I looked at the screen. I smiled. And I finished checking out. When I got to the car, I called back. "Hey, sorry, I was in line." Her reply was simple. "That's okay." No sigh. No guilt. No story about how she could have been dying. Just okay. And it stunned me more than any speech could have. Because for the first time in years, our relationship wasn't built on urgency. It was starting, carefully, clumsily, to be built on respect. Another shift came at work. My manager offered overtime, the kind of overtime I used to jump at because overworking felt safer than resting. Safer than thinking. Safer than feeling. But that weekend, Tasha had asked if I wanted to go to the flea market, wander around, drink iced coffee, and do absolutely nothing productive. Old me, take the overtime. Prove your worth. Stack money like armor. New me paused. What if I don't need to prove anything today? The thought whispered. So I said, "Thanks, but I'm going to pass this time." My manager blinked, surprised. Then nodded. "Good," she said. "You deserve weekends too." And I stood there stunned because the world didn't collapse. I didn't get fired. No thunderbolt of punishment came crashing down. Felt like discovering gravity all over again. That evening, lying on my couch with a candle burning and a silly show playing in the background, I realized something huge. I had lived most of my life like comfort was dangerous. Like peace meant I wasn't trying hard enough. Like if I relaxed for even 1 second, everything would fall apart. But nothing fell apart. Instead, the opposite happened. My friendships deepened. My sleep softened. My anxiety, still there, stopped feeling like a permanent siren and more like weather passing through. Then came the day that would have shattered me in the past. Jason called. He never called unless something was wrong. "Hey," he said, awkward. "I need help." Old patterns rushed forward like ghosts. Say yes. Fix it. Drop everything. But therapy, time, and exhaustion stood beside me like quiet bodyguards. "What do you need?" I asked, neutral. He sighed. "My car won't start. Mom said maybe you could come drive us to the mechanic." There it was. The old script. The automatic casting. She will come. She always comes. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar swirl, guilt, pressure, responsibility. Then I took a slow breath. "I can't today," I said gently. "But I can help you look up tow companies. And I can chip in a little if it's expensive. But I can't be the transportation anymore." Silence. Not angry silence. Processing silence. "Okay," he said finally. "Yeah. That's fair. Fair." That word rang like a bell inside my chest. We hung up, and instead of spiraling into shame, something different happened. I felt steady. Grounded. Like I had chosen myself, and nobody died, nobody raged, nobody vanished. Later, Mom texted. "He figured it out. Proud of you for saying no." I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I needed validation, but because it felt like witnessing a shift in our family system, slow, imperfect, but real. That night, I sat by the window with a mug of tea, city lights blinking outside like distant stars, and I finally let myself admit something I had once believed was selfish. I wanted a life where love didn't feel like labor. I wanted holidays where I wasn't the mediator. Conversations where my worth wasn't measured in usefulness. Relationships where no didn't equal exile. And maybe, for the first time, I believed I could actually build that. Bit by bit. Boundary by boundary. Truth by truth. I thought back to that hospital night. To being the backup child. To running on empty and calling it devotion. And I whispered, almost like a prayer, "I forgive the girl who didn't know better. And I'm taking care of the woman who does." Somewhere deep inside, something loosened. Not healed fully. Not perfect. But freer. And freedom, even in small doses, tastes like oxygen. The final test came quietly, like most of them do. No crisis. No flashing lights. No dramatic emergency. Just a Sunday afternoon and a family group chat. "Mom, family dinner tonight? Everyone come. I miss you all." Before, that message would have come wrapped in pressure, guilt, obligation disguised as affection. This time it felt different. I hesitated anyway. Old muscle memory. What if they need me? What if they get upset if I don't show? What if my absence means I'm the problem again? Then I realized something simple. Showing up should come from choice, not fear. So I texted. "I can come, but I'll leave early. I have plans later tonight." My fingers hovered, waiting for the disapproval. Mom replied. "Sounds good. We'll eat at 6. That was it. Dinner, the air felt lighter. No tension brewing under the surface. No picking sides. No competition for affection. We laughed about bad cooking fails. Dad complained about the neighbor's leaf blower. Jason told a ridiculous story about his coworker trying to microwave foil. At one point, Mom brought out photo albums. Not curated. Not selective. Just real memories. There was baby Jason with cake on his face. Me with crooked bangs and missing teeth. Holidays where the tree leaned awkwardly, not like the Instagram perfect ones. We flipped pages together. And for the first time, I saw something I had never allowed myself to see. They really had tried, even when they got it wrong. Not perfectly. Not fairly. Not always kindly. But not every wound came from cruelty. Some came from fear. Some from ignorance. Some from patterns they had inherited without knowing how to break. When the evening wound down, I stood up. "I'm heading out," I said. Mom hugged me, not too tight, not too long. "Drive safe," she whispered. "And thanks for coming. I like having you here. Not needing. Not using. Liking. That mattered." On the porch, Dad lingered beside me for a second. "I'm still learning," he said, almost embarrassed. "So am I," replied. He nodded like that was enough. Outside, the air was cool. The sky dimmed into evening blues and violets. I slid into my car and sat with my hands on the steering wheel. For a long time, I believed healing meant going back to the way things used to be. Now I understood. Healing meant letting the past exist without letting it drive. It meant accepting there would always be scars, but refusing to live inside the wound. As I pulled onto the road, headlights stretching ahead of me like a soft invitation, the voiceover inside my head sounded different than it used to. Not angry. Not begging. Not desperate for approval. Just steady. I used to think I was the backup child. The spare. The reliable option when the real choices failed. But maybe the truth was simpler. I was the one who grew first. The one who felt the imbalance. The one who named it out loud. The one who decided love without boundaries wasn't love, it was sacrifice dressed up as loyalty. And choosing myself didn't destroy my family, changed the way we existed together. And yeah, not every story gets tied up neatly. Some dinners still feel awkward. Some conversations still sting. Some old habits tap at the door, asking to be let back in. But now I know something no one ever taught me growing up. You don't earn love by disappearing. You don't prove loyalty by breaking yourself. You don't have to bleed to belong. And walking away isn't always abandonment. Sometimes it's the first step toward finally coming home to yourself. As the city lights flickered into a soft blur and the radio hummed quietly in the background, I let out a slow breath I didn't know I'd been holding for years. And for the first time, the sentence in my chest didn't tremble, it stood. I am not the backup. I am not the afterthought. I am not the emergency exit. I am a whole person, deserving of care, presence, love, and peace. And that was the real ending. Not revenge. Not punishment. Not victory. Just freedom.